Well, welcome back. This is Julie Baronick, the Seven Figure Builder Show. And I'm here today with my friend Julie Hood. Hey, Julie.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's the Julie Show today. So I'm excited.
I know, right? It's so much fun when you get to meet other Julies.
I know, right? And we're going to talk about a new stream of income for coaches and consultants today that requires a fraction of the time of most of the others and helps you draw in leads. Like it does so many things for people's business. So I'm excited to dive in. But can you tell us a bit about what it is that you do and this amazing thing that you have?
Yes, thanks for asking. I have coursecreatorshq.com. We've been going since 2017, but I've actually was way online before that. But I sort of focused in on course creators and coaches. They're my favorite people because they're out to improve the world with what they know and make a little revenue while they're at it. So we have a podcast, weekly newsletter. I do tons of courses, obviously, and I like to do live group coaching. So lots of fun, really interesting ways to get connected with other outstanding people. So it's been really fun.
I love it. And so I'm going to just dive right in because I'm sure a lot of us have some experience with courses, either from creating them, from taking them, or both, right? But what would you say is, we're going to say, the secret to a successful course? Like, what makes the difference?
There's several things. And so it starts at the beginning. And this is one that comes up so much for my course creators. And that is they want to share too much in a course. And it comes from such a good place. They want to just give and give and give. And they have all this knowledge and they want to share it with their audience. But what ends up happening is it's either so big it doesn't get finished, or it's so big your students don't finish it. Because I know we've all sat down and had 45-minute video as your first lesson and you're just like, oh, I don't know about this one. So I always have to rein in my course creators and be like, you have so much to share. Let's keep it concise. Just give them what they need to get the result. And then we're going to take all this other knowledge you have and use it in more ways. So either more courses, more coaching, more ways. And then if you want to bundle some of those things, that's great. But really focusing in on the first side of things, which is, how do I make sure I'm not overwhelming my students? So that's part of it. And then I think there's been kind of a transition lately into recognizing that a lot of people don't finish. If we really want to be honest, they buy things and they're excited about what you're going to help them with, but then the finishing part of it. So there's a couple different things that you can do to help with that. One of them is having a private podcast of your content. And if it's the right content, if it's something where you don't have to see the screen to follow along, where you could just listen, it can be a really useful experience for your students, because then they don't have to be sitting at the computer and trying to log in and figure all the follow and where was I and all of that. They can listen on their podcast app. And so I was talking with Lindsay Padilla of Hello Audio about this and how much more completion you can get when people can listen. So if you can combine those two things, you're going to be 99% of the way ahead of a lot of the course creators that are out there already.
Yeah. And I love that idea of the private podcast, right? Like those mini podcasts, because it's exclusive content that only they get, I'm assuming, right? Because it comes with your course and it's hitting people from different angles. Like if they're an auditory person, like for me, you will rarely see me sit down and read a book, but I am a voracious consumer of audiobooks. Like it's just, obviously I'm in the podcasting world, right? So it just depends on how we're wired that you can feed that to your people in a way that they like to consume it.
Exactly. And there's a different level, I think, of intimacy that you get with your students, your listeners, your podcast listeners, when you're doing audio. And it's different from video too, because I think there's a little bit more of almost a distraction when we're watching the videos. But with audio, when we're listening, it's almost in your head, in your earbuds kind of thing. It's a whole different level. So I agree.
Yeah, that, and depending where they are, right? Like for me, I love to listen while I'm driving. So you've got me focused other than trying to control my vehicle. Like,
Yeah,
which
being
is
safe.
right, different than when I've got notifications popping up when I'm watching it, right? So yeah, no, I really like that idea. And I think you mentioned about it's so easy for us to tell too much, right? Like we have so much to share, and that's very easy to do. But how do people find like the best course idea so that it's just contained to something that is palatable for their audience?
So there's a couple different things that I like to have you look at. And the first one is, and this usually surprises people when they hear this, is you want to find that somebody else is selling something similar to what you're doing. And you that's a great thing. A lot of times it will disappoint some of my new course creators. They're like, oh, somebody already is selling this. But your content, your wisdom, your brilliance is going to come through in your course and the way you teach and how you put it together so that that's why people buy from you. Because I don't know about you, but I bought so many Facebook ad courses trying to figure it out that I just keep buying, keep looking, keep checking it out. So people will definitely buy even if you already see something out there. So that's one piece of it. And then the second piece is to really think about what is it that you've gotten results with, either for yourself or if you've gotten results for someone else. Then you can build on those experiences, kind of pull out the knowledge and even put it into your own sort of framework of how you would do this for someone. And I was talking with one of my students the other day, and she has all this big toolkit of how she works with women. And she was recognizing, she said, so usually when I do my one-on-one consulting, I will pull specific tools that a person needs. So they get a very custom approach. But she said, I can put that into a framework and have all of these different tools that can be part of a course and then kind of guide people depending on what they need and where they are. But she said, I really recognize that I could put this into a framework that would work for multiple people. So that's kind of the second step to thinking about how you want to do things.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And to your first point, I mean, like you said, we can tend to get discouraged, like someone else is already doing this. But if somebody's already doing it, then there's an established market for it, right? Like people, like to your point, people are buying this thing. So therefore, come in with your lens and you can, communicate that and teach that in a different way. And there's a proven market, which is really nice.
Exactly. If you have to educate your market first and like convince them there's a problem, that is so much more challenging and more difficult than if you can come into something and be another voice in a different way, in a different angle with your own uniqueness.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a
Love that.
longer pathway, right, to sale when you have to start at the education point than when they're already problem aware and they're already solution aware, and then they just need to find you. So
Exactly. You got it.
I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. And then the other, what you mentioned about getting results. I'm very sorry. I love to geek out about this stuff too, but
Right.
I find it so helpful when we think of it as in terms of quick wins, right? Like what is that kind of like with lead magnets, right? Like what is an actionable thing that I can help somebody with? Then they build your trust even more. They have more trust in you, and it's easier to help them with the next thing or the next course, right? That you can work in a series.
Yes, yes. And I will grab a bunch of my students sometime. And we have this course that we've been doing lately. It's about mini courses and totally builds on what you were saying in that you want it to be a quick win in that even if they don't do anything else with you, they feel like they accomplished something. So we'll jump in sometimes and really look at, okay, what's the big course that you're going to offer? And then what's a very early step in that process? So for example, let's say you were I'll just make this up, but let's say you're going to teach a course on how to make an incredible lasagna. You wouldn't want your mini course or your lead magnet, either one, to be how to assemble the lasagna, because that's later on in the process. That would be in your full course. But you could do, these are the 5 most incredible ingredients that will make any lasagna taste better. And so they start with that mini course, they go shopping, And even if they don't do your full course, they can make a better lasagna because they know your ingredients. So that's a kind of a way to sort of keep in your mind, like, what should I be doing? Not only for lead magnets, but if I decide, I've started having my folks do mini courses so that they can get going on a project and like get it created. There's something powerful about getting to that finish line. So that's where we've been heading people these days.
Yeah, I love that. And you actually too mentioned get it done, right? You don't get stuck as like, I have this monster of a course that you don't even know if it's something that people want. So
Exactly. Right.
how does market research tie into all of this? What is your approach there?
So I have a couple sites that I really like to go check out, but my favorite, I'll be honest, is Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups where people are actually talking about your topic. And so I would go in there and like I found this really hot topic in it was an like a coaches group, and they were asking, where do you host your courses? And 187 different comments. Like people were hot about this topic and had opinions and found it super important. So I have a freebie that I give away. And that's how I found that topic was, oh, this is something people really ask about, have a lot of opinions about. So that can be a great place to start. And then from there, I like to go out and see, what's on Google right now, what's on Amazon, what's on what are people commenting, especially in reviews, or if you're on YouTube, what's in the YouTube comments for a video. Like all of that is golden research because it's people actually commenting and telling you what they need, what their questions are. So I start there. And then I also like a website called Answer the Public. So they will let you do some free searches and you can get detailed about what people are asking, what ideas are out there quite a bit. So once you get through all of that kind of research, you have a pretty good feeling for how good your ideas are or where you should focus.
Yeah, no, I love all those. Those are like gold, like you mentioned, going through what are people actually asking. And the other one that I found that was hidden from my obvious view for a long time was Google itself, but not actually in Google, meaning if you search, I don't know if you found this or use this, but if you search for something, but you scroll down in the results and there's a series of questions that people have asked on that topic, and you can open and expand it and it'll give you more questions on that topic. I find that is a great brainstorming tool of like, oh, I didn't think that people were asking that about this particular thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a new feature. And you're right. There's a lot there that you can mine and work with. I also actually sometimes will go out and, this one you kind of take with a grain of salt and put your own knowledge to it. But I will ask ChatGPT, or I actually prefer Copilot, Microsoft's Copilot better. And I will say, tell me the big obstacles that course creators have, or that podcasters have, or, whatever group I'm trying to reach. And usually I get some good ideas that way and something I can kind of build on. So that's a great idea.
Yeah. The other one like that I found again hidden from my plain view was in Canva. If you use
Oh,
there's a doc feature in Canva for those that have Canva out there, and there's a magic a magic write feature in it that I use quite all the time actually, where it's similar to ChatGPT, but tell me the top 20 things that course creators are struggling with today, and it'll give you a whole list, and it gives me a different lens than some other AI tools that I found that I play with as well. So for those that have Canva and want to play with it, that's another great spot if you already have it too.
I've seen that on there and I haven't played with it yet. So now you've inspired me. I'm going to go play with Magic Write.
I
So
I use it all the time, quite honestly. I use it with my clients. I'm like, here's an easy way to brainstorm, and so it's gonna suck. A lot of them are gonna suck. Full transparency. Like,
yes,
use your gut, and this one stands out to me. And so yeah, I find it really helpful.
that's
So
great. Yeah.
you mentioned too about the fall off rate, like that people will often start a course, but they won't necessarily complete it. So are there things that you recommend for that, or what are your thoughts to help people get to the final result you're trying to help them with?
Yeah, and part of it is human nature. We get all excited, and then you have to find a way to kind of get through that valley, because at the beginning you're like, oh, this will be great. I can do this. I'll get to this. And then there's this natural human progression of, oh, this is going to take some work, and I'm going to have to put out some effort. And they're in that messy middle of like, okay, now what am I going to do with this? And then they get back up to the, oh, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel moment. So your goal as the course creator is to sit down and figure out, okay, how can I help them get through that messy middle part where they can't see the end, they have to do the work. So a few things I like to do. One, I really like having live coaching calls so that people can bring you their obstacles when they're stuck and they feel like, oh, I don't know what to do next. They need somewhere to go. So having either group coaching, or some coaches will do Voxer coaching or email coaching, lots of ways to get questions answered. But that's another way to help people keep moving. And one of the things you can do to actually help with the revenue side of things too is you can have the basic course that I like to call the DIY version that they don't get any support with. And then you can have a slightly more expensive version where they get some kind of level of support. So I think that will help. Then also preempting it too, sending an email that says, hey, we're 3 weeks in. This is where it gets tough. You might be not able to see it completely, right now, but I'm holding that space for you, and keep going. And so I've sent my students who are in my 6-month program, this is one of the things that comes up quite a bit. And so I've sent them a GIF a few times that are like, it's from the Nemo movie, from Finding Nemo. And it's, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep going. I promise we'll get there. So
Absolutely.
anything you can do to kind of help through that path, I think is good. Have you seen some other things that you've liked that people have done?
Yeah, I mean, I love Nurture email series. I'm a huge fan of, I love automation and geeking out in systems and automation. So I love setting up very personalized automation for where people are, or if they're getting off track. So like if the expectation is, hey, you do this once a week, and they're 3 weeks in and they're on like lesson one, right? Like you could say, hey, I noticed you're still at lesson one. Are you stuck? Do you need help? Is there a problem? Right? Like reach out. This is our support if there is support. And then like making sure that the notifications are in sync with where they are. Because to me, nothing's more annoying when I binge through a course and then their notifications are completely off sync of where I'm at. And it's like, well, no, I already did that. Now you lost my attention. So I think there's a happy medium there where I like to try to do things as real time as possible to give those little tidbits of encouragement and, keep people engaged in what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes I'll get some course creators, and I actually like these too, that will do 30-day kinds of things, or specific time periods. And so they set up their automation to be once a day for 30 days. But you're right, if you have students who are either going fast or slow, it's not necessarily going to work for them. So setting that up to be set up on when they complete lessons might be a much better way to do it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, to me, it's the relevance of whatever communication you have with people that is what really connects with people, or it turns them off. Like we're so used to in this day of, having everything personalized and just knowing where we are. And I have a love-hate relationship with it all. But the reality is that's, what we've been trained to do. So, the more that we can connect with people where they're at, the more we're having a relevant experience with them, the more we keep their attention, the more we build the trust, it all ties together. So I think it all helps.
Right. Yeah. I think there's definitely that's a next level, I would say, for some of my folks. But once you can get there where you can really put in that thought around that, I love that idea of
Yeah.
keeping it so targeted for them.
And I'm curious, you mentioned kind of the different levels or different tiers, but what do you recommend people when they're trying to figure out their price? I know so many people struggle. It's like, is it a $47 price, or is it a $4,000 course? Like there's so much in the middle there.
So we could probably talk a whole hour on pricing, but I'll give you my short Julie Hood version. And the first thing that I tell everyone is whatever price you pick, regardless of why you pick it, is you have to be 100% confident in the price that you're charging. Because if you're not, it will come through. Your messaging will be vague. Your audience will hear it if you don't feel like this is an incredible offer for you. The second thing I like to talk about is do make it into a full, complete offer for them. So it's not just, I'm going to teach you in this one course. There's some extra things, and some of that extra knowledge that we were talking about earlier, those can become some of those extra things. So it becomes this complete offer for folks. And then after that, it gets a little challenging in that sometimes you just have to test. You just have to try things out. And so the way I test things is I usually start low. I've trained my audience and my community that the first time I tell you about a product is going to be the best price you're probably going to see the whole time. So jump in here at the beginning, because then as I refine, as I improve, as I add more to it, I'm going to raise the price.
Yeah.
So jump in at the beginning. So it's it's a little easier to raise your pricing than it is to start super high and then bring it down. I had a coach that was wanting me to see if I was interested in working with them, and they had I think their lowest price at one point was $2,500, and then their team came back and said, "Hey, we could get you started for $100." And it was such a disconnect in my brain.
Yeah.
That it didn't work, didn't resonate, even though I love the $100 price, but I was like,
No,
something's
I
not
lost touch.
quite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then probably the last thing, and this is something that I'd like to have people thinking about earlier, is what are you going to give away for free? What are you going to make sure everyone pays for? And to have those thoughts in your mind so that, for example, I have this blueprint that I share with my coaching clients about how they get to selling more courses. And I never share that for free. I never give that out to anyone. It's only for my paid clients. And so thinking about that early is a good idea, because then you have those exclusive content pieces that you don't share or talk about. And then everything else is free game. And I love to talk about. So
Absolutely.
is that what you've seen too?
I have. No, I have. And I think it's important to go with your gut of if you're communicating a price and into what were saying earlier, you're communicating a price and you're like, oh God, that's way too much. Or, oh my God, I'm giving this away for nothing, right? Like all of that energy is going to come across to people, whether you realize it or not, it will. And so you need to be aligned and centered on, okay, this price is freaking amazing. You're going to get XYZ for this. If you want to raise your price, then align your offer to match your price. You want to lower it, align your offer for that, break it off as a piece, right? Like there's ways around that, but you need to be really solid in your gut of yes, I am worth every freaking penny of this offer and more. If you want it, great. If not, whatever. So that confidence is a big part of what actually sells whatever it is that you're selling.
There's a copywriter that I follow. His name is Bob Bly, and he's incredibly talented. And he said your offer should be worth 10 times what your price point is, which if you think about it, that's a pretty big ask, especially for some high-end, high-ticket coaching. So I always like to kind of use that as a gauge. I don't always fall into do that necessarily, but it is an interesting question to ask yourself. Is this worth 10 times what I'm pricing it at? And if it's not, then maybe you want to think about what could I do to make it more valuable, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I also find personally, I like to have an offer. Everybody likes to have an offer like this, but that you go to market with it and you talk to people, they're like, well, yeah, right. Like you shouldn't have to feel like you're pushing a big boulder uphill every time you're talking to somebody, because if you do, something's not aligned, right? Like
That's
there's something
good.
missing there. You know what I mean?
That's such a good point. Yes. and getting that messaging to match. I love that.
Yeah. And actually, to that point, I could ask questions all day, but so many people go out and they build a course, right? And they just like, I have an idea, I have a talent, I'm building a course. They go to market and they hear crickets. So, what would you recommend for people that are at that point in their journey and they're like, I don't even know where to start to fix something that I don't even know what's broken?
I know, and it's just such soul crushing when that happens. I hate it when I hear that. So there's a couple things, and the first thing I want to say is probably 95% of the time when I see that, there's a couple things that are going on. And the first one is you probably didn't get it in front of enough people. And so this was one of the things that was so enlightening when I had some 7-figure clients. And I recognized one of the big differences that they had is they had a huge email list. And so whenever they would offer something, it wasn't going to a few hundred people. It was going to the one group had like 200,000 people that they would send their emails to. So they could get sales very easily. It's easy to get a percentage of those folks getting to purchase. So when you're just starting, if that happens, your first question should be, how many people actually saw this? And then after that, I like to look at the messaging, because the other thing I see, and this isn't quite as common, but sometimes I will see this, is there isn't a specific outcome for a course. It's more of, I'm going to help you feel better, and I'm going to help, your life will be happier and successful. And so those kinds of, while those are very positive things, they're very vague. So it's hard to really grab onto something to where your student goes, oh, this is for me. I have to have this right now. So that's a couple places to start. And then, there's so many things that you could be talking about how you reach people, how you told them about your course, how many times you even shared it. That's another one. So, if you sent out 2 emails about a course that you created and you didn't get anyone, how many people actually saw that email and those 2 emails and were able to consider the offer. So there's always a big discussion. I'm sure you've heard this too, like, how many emails should I be sending, especially when I have a new offer? And it has increased over the years just because people aren't, there's so much coming at us. We're not seeing everything. So that's kind of the third leg of the 3 things that I start with.
Yeah, no, and that makes total sense. And so often we feel like, well, I put it on Facebook and I've got 5,000 friends. So 5,000 people saw it, when in reality, it may be like 30, right?
Right.
With the algorithms, they screw you. It's like, it's very
So build your
deceiving.
email list, build your email list, build your email list.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And yeah, I see it as well in clients. And it's like, for me, I always feel like, go back to market research and align, and it may be a quick fix of like, your messaging, which I completely agree with. But if it's not, then go back and realign your topic, make sure if your topic's solid, awesome, right? And it's talking to your dream person, awesome. Then there's other things that we can tweak to make it better, right? So that you're actually reaching the person that you're trying to reach. And I always think of it as like a series of micro conversions, just in my geeky, methodical brain of like, figure out, is this the right topic with the right person? And then look at each individual piece of that journey that you can then optimize to say, okay, am I getting leads? Yes. Are people interested? Yes. Are they coming to the page? Yes. Is the page not converting? Right. Like you can narrow it down that way instead of looking at the whole journey and being like, I don't even know where to start, which is very overwhelming. And to your point, soul crushing of like, I've put so much energy into this and it just flopped. I'm just going to throw it away and start another one, which I think we've all been guilty of. But, you don't have to throw it all away if something is not getting you the results that, you're looking for. And ultimately call you because you can help them with this.
Oh, thanks. Well, and I think to your point too, I would see some of my clients who had been doing this for years and years and years, who knew their audience backwards and forwards. They would launch new products that would flop. And it's never a full blown guaranteed kind of thing. You're testing and you're trying it out. And I think one of the things I found that really hard as a business owner is the concept of, we're going to just keep doing things, and some of them are going to work and some of them are going to fail, and you got to be okay with that. And that took me many, many years to get okay with, because I don't know about you, but I got the message all the way through school: if you study hard enough and you work hard enough, you will get that good grade, and we will pat you on the head and say good job and give you an A, and,
Right.
and life is happy and good. And then you become a business owner where you're like, okay, there's nobody patting me on the head anymore. There's no grades, nobody telling me what to do. And then all of this stuff is failing. Like, it's a shock
Yeah.
for
If
folks who
you
are not ready for it, I think.
Totally. Yeah. If you throw enough spaghetti at the wall, something will stick. And that's not really the methodology that we want to go by. But to your point, I mean, that's really what marketing is test, measure, improve, right? Like what worked, what didn't. It's not personal. It's not people saying they hate you. It's just something is misaligned. So we tweak, we test, we measure, and go from there.
And I have to say, because this popped up for me just now, in case this is happening to anyone else, especially when I was brand new, unsubscribes would be difficult to, I'd be like, what did I do? Why did they leave? What was wrong with this email? And get a lot of energy around it. And I finally have gotten to a place where a couple things that I do. Number one, I turn off all notifications about unsubscribes. I don't want to know. I don't want to see it. Don't care. Try not to care. And then the second thing is, and I've seen this a lot lately, people are spring cleaning, and so they're just mass unsubscribing,
Mm.
and they're not even paying attention to what they're unsubscribing from. They're just trying to get rid of emails because it's too much and they have too many. So you could be the very best person in their inbox, but they're not paying that much attention. They're just I've got to have less email. So if you can tell yourself it's not what you're saying or what you're doing, I think that could be helpful.
Yeah. And I'll take it one notch more than that because I agree 100%. I look at it because I used to get frustrated too. It's like, what did I say? Like, what was in this email that pissed you off enough to say, I don't want to hear from you again? But I flipped it in my head of that's a no, right? Which is okay. And, I need X amount of no's to reach a yes. So thank you for getting off my list. Thank you for not reporting me to spam. So I would always much rather you unsubscribe than, say this is spam and I don't want it because that's not what I do. So I like to make my unsubscribes really prominent, actually. And I have them as a PS of like, hey, if you don't want to hear from me again, no problem. Just hit this link. It's all good, right? Like I'm proactive and even asking for it so that my list is a list of people that are engaged and people that want to hear from me. And the people that don't want to hear from me, I don't want to talk to you. So, like, it's all good, So that was something that I shifted in my head to look at it. It's not personal. And that's one less no that I have to come across to then hit a yes, right?
Yes. And technically, since you like the tech stuff too, like I do, when you're sending to just those folks who want to hear from you, who open all your emails, the email providers, the Gmails, the Yahoos, they love you even more. So it's kind of an interesting balance for me because I've gone back and forth on only sending to people who open regularly, and keeping people on your list forever, because you never quite know when they're going to want to come back to you.
Oh, yeah.
And you kind of have to get to know your audience, because I have had some folks who have been on my list longer, and then they eventually are like, okay, now I'm ready. So a year or 18 months. And then I've had some folks who jump in right away. They're all excited and they want to get going. So it's an interesting balance, I think.
For sure. Absolutely. And I'm curious, you've accomplished a ton in your business, you help your clients, like you've got so much that amazing things you've done, but how do you define success? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, such a good question. So this was one of the things when I first started, when my son was born, actually. And I sat down and I recognized for me that at the end, they talk about, imagining yourself at the end of your life. I realized for me, and this isn't for everyone, this was just my own realization, that if I messed up the motherhood side of things, but maybe had some incredible career. I was working as a consultant at one of the accounting firms, kind of like you with Fortune 500 companies. And it was a very stressful, very busy, a very difficult job to do as a new mother. And I was like, if I mess up this motherhood thing, I am not going to be happy at the end of my life. But if I don't have some big career job where I've made partner or whatever, I'm not going to be unhappy about that. And there's a middle ground. Obviously, you have to have enough where you make enough to survive and live. And luckily my husband was in a good place where we could go to the place where I did not have to have some supercharged job and career while we had little kids and stuff. So that was what started me out on the path of the choices that I was making. And so I'm happy to say they are both my daughter's about to graduate. They're both about launched and they're incredible people. And so I feel like I solved that one. But I think the important piece for your listeners to hear is to just think about it. What is it that is going to be rewarding for you, and go that direction, not what somebody else is telling you that is success. Like, what is it really for you?
Absolutely. Now, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why we do what we do, generally speaking. So that's, yeah, definitely important for success. And
Yeah.
also, if you had the attention of the whole world for 5 minutes, what would you tell them?
Be kind. And I really feel like our planet could be so different if every person could be kind. I think we would be in a completely different, unbelievable place. And if you want to add to that, do some unknown kindness. How exciting is it when you drive through Starbucks and somebody's like, oh, the person in front of you just bought your coffee for you.
Yep.
Those kinds of things, I think, are what we definitely need. And it can solve a lot of the challenges out there. So good question.
100%. Yeah, it's funny. Years and years ago, I probably have them somewhere around here. I made little business cards that said, please enjoy this random act of kindness and pass it along, or something like that. And so I leave those. I got the whole case of them and designed them, whatever. And so I leave them whenever I do the same thing. Like, that's just one of my favorite things to do too. Is it must be a Julie thing that, we're kindred spirits here.
There you go.
Just leave it and pay it forward, like, it's just, you can make such an impact in other people's lives in a way that you don't even know.
Right? Oh, yeah. I love that. And I love the business card idea. I may have to borrow
I'll
that
send
one.
it to
That's fantastic.
you. I'll send it, and we'll put it at the end of this episode. So for anybody that wants it, you can make your own, but I'll give you the template for it.
I love that. Thank you.
Sure. So for people that want to find you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, so I'm at coursecreatorshq.com with an S, Course Creators. And I also have a podcast. It's all about online courses, and I try to make it super actionable so you leave with some steps that you can take as you're listening. And then we have the email newsletter. And probably the last thing, if you need to message me, Instagram or Facebook is usually a good way to get connected. So any of those are good places to start, and definitely get on the email list because that's where all the fun stuff goes.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know you mentioned earlier, you have a magic little gift there on your website.
Yeah, so I'll send you the link so you can add it to the show notes if you want. But it's my mini course on how to find your profitable course idea. And it's just a little short course. If you're thinking about, should I do a course or not, it's a really good place to start. And it's not very long. So I'll send you that.
Awesome. A course about a course. That's perfect.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Julie. I appreciate being on today.
Thanks so much for having me. So much fun to chat with you.
And you as well. And if you found value in this episode, please do share it and tell people find us. And you can find me at sevenfigurebuilder.com. And I will see you in the next episode.